The life of women in prison has been glamorized most recently in the blockbuster movie Jawan. But what is life really like for women inside prison? I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story, and today we'll be talking to Sudha Bharadwaj. Miss Bharadwaj, someone who graduated from IIT, gave up her US citizenship to become an activist in India, found herself inside prison in the Bhima-Koregaon case. She used that time to chronicle her experiences and look at prison life through the eyes of women there. She's out on bail right now and cannot talk about her case. We've been told that we cannot talk to her about her case, but we can certainly talk to her about her book. And her book is called From Phansi Yard. And it is about the year that she spent among women prisoners chronicling their lives. Let's welcome Sudha Bharadwaj to the program with that caveat that if you don't hear us asking questions about her case, it's because legally the case is still ongoing and we cannot ask her questions about that. But I want to ask you about this book. I don't know if you've had the chance to see Shah Rukh Khan's movie Jawan. Have you, Sudha ji, at all managed to see that movie?
No, I'm sorry. I haven't been able to see it. No.
The reason I asked
I have watched.
A large part of the movie is about women prisoners in jail. So that's why it just occurred to me as I was going through your book. But go ahead. You were saying something.
No, but I have watched a Netflix serial, I think, called Scoop, which is about a journalist in jail.
That's right.
Based on the life of Jigna Bora. And interestingly, that book I had read while I was in jail. It was called Behind the Bars in Baikala. And
that's right.
So
why
that
this
I have.
Book? Why this book? Why did you feel it was important to tell the story, in particular of women? Is there something different you think about the female prisoner, the profile of the alleged female criminal from men? And what is some of the sort of, who or what are some of the cases that you encountered that have really stayed with you?
Your first question was, why did I think of writing this book? Actually, when I wrote it, I never thought about a book at all. I'm a person who, from a very young age, has been involved in being with people, in organizing, and so on. So actually, that experience, my first year and a half or so in Yerwada jail was an experience of solitary. We were in the Phansi Yard. We were in a solitary cells. So my only connection with the people outside was, observing them through the bars, and then there would be sometimes chance encounters with them when we, went to mulakat or court, or lined up to get water or go to the canteen or something. So actually, those stories were just my way of keeping sane, actually. So I just liked watching them, and as I always say, that when I reached jail, I really found that I was one of the more privileged ones, because at least I knew I had good lawyers outside. I knew there were people who were struggling for me. My daughter was there. I could make some sense as a lawyer of what was happening. Even if I felt it was unfair, I could at least make sense of it. But here were these many women, many of them abandoned by their families, many of them not able to understand the technicalities of the legal case, not knowing what is happening in the court, and most of them poor, and that sense, that helplessness, despite which they were able to survive. I mean, that was what inspired me to write. And you say, why women?
Why women?
Yes, there are certain things about women which are different from male prisoners. I mean, one is that many of the crimes are to do with crimes within the family, and the whole the way a family structure operates, and the way that erupts into certain crimes of whether it's passion or self-defense or whatever it is, that really tells you what patriarchy is doing behind the four walls, which is usually hidden away to us. So that is one part of it. The other part of it is that there are very specific crimes in which you find women. I mean, sex work is one. You know, uh, and a lot of women who also seem to be in jail actually because of their partners, because of their
Mm.
husbands, or or their sons, or their other family members, and whom I like to call legal hostages, because actually they knew nothing about the crime, but they were the
Yeah.
sitting duck. So the husbands who might be gangsters have absconded, and there's only the mother or the wife or whoever it is at home.
and
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 this is
and and will
perfectly
oftentimes be made to sign documents that they do not either understand or do not have the authority to question within the family structure.
exactly. And for example, one story which I have written is about this young woman, and really, uh, you couldn't. I mean, she really knew nothing about her husband's crimes, and that is proven from the fact. I mean, she had a 4-year-old child by the time I was in jail, but she came when the child was a little baby infant. And apparently, the first she came to know of it was when she was called to the police station and confronted with two other women and told that your husband has these other wives in other cities. And can you imagine the shock that woman had? I mean,
Yeah.
she's and the only reason why she's there is maybe something is in her name. That man has used the proceeds of crime buying some property in her name, or use that address or something or the other. And in those cases, I always felt, okay, attach the property if you wish, but let the woman go. She doesn't know anything about the crime. Nothing is served, no purpose is served by keeping her in jail.
And you also tell the story of a murder accused, where you say that the woman hit her drunken, violent, abusive husband who used to assault their daughter, and you say yes, she killed the man, maybe not without intending to. She hit back, but is that murder? Is that homicide? These are complex moral questions.
Exactly. And you see, the difficulty has been, I don't know whether you've seen a film called Provoked.
I have, I have.
You have. And that was a case in which, continuous abuse within the family. And then the woman actually, ties up her husband and burns him to death. And now, in a court of law in India, that would definitely, she would not have been given. I mean, that would not have been seen as self-defense,
Hmm.
because self-defense is something which is supposed to happen only on the spur of the moment when you're being attacked. And
Yeah.
sudden and grave provocation, which is the other defense, the other legal defense, that because it was sudden and grave provocation, you murdered somebody. But that would also not apply, because it seems to be premeditated. But the impact that long-term abuse has on a woman, that
Hmm.
has not been factored in. And you see, this is not factored into our law. I mean, the only place where it is, unfortunately, is through in let us say 498A, etc., where we talk about. But even there, my observation was that when there is a living daughter-in-law who goes multiple times to the police station and complains about beatings, about ill treatment, about this or about that.
Hmm.
Usually, she's not taken seriously. She's told to go home, or she's, the moment she dies, because now there is a legal presumption in 498A that if you're a newly wedded woman within 7 years of your marriage, you die in suspicious circumstances, then the in-laws can be picked up. And then sometimes there's an absolute excess on the other side, and everybody's picked up, including all kinds of innocent, usually women. Interestingly, the men are again left out, and it's the women on the other side.
And again, I want to clarify that it's not that one is condoning vigilantism or taking justice into one's own hands, but that the problems of women, many women, not all women, come from an absence of power in at the home, in society, and that has to
Exactly.
be contextualized. Now, I want to ask you. Your book is called From Phansi Yard. Why? Why is it? A lot of people will not get the reference, so please do tell us. Yes.
Yeah, actually, that is because in the first half of our incarceration, when we were in Yerwada, we were actually kept in the Phansi Yard. That's the death row. So they were 4 cells. Actually, there were five. One was just used as a storeroom. So there were 4 cells. Two were occupied by two sisters who were on the death row, and then there was myself and Professor Shoma Sen, we are co-accused in our case, and we were and as I said, the fifth was used as a storeroom and for the so this these four cells with a narrow corridor. It's sort of inside a cage, and that cage is placed overlooking a ground. So actually, it was from it was, I call it a cage with a view. So it was a when we sat in the corridor, we could see the ground, we could see the
I
women
mean,
there.
clearly you developed some prison humor.
Fortunately, I have a way of laughing through myself through life. So I
Good
think
for you.
that's what's
Good for
kept
you.
me sane. And from the back of our cell, we could see the factory where women would come to work. So there
Yeah.
was so it was from there. It was not about it. So the book is not about Phansi Yard, but it is
Yeah.
from Phansi Yard. It is a view from the Phansi Yard. Though of course all the conversations happened outside it.
Yeah.
When we're in the van going to the court, or when we're standing in the line for the mulakat, or
Yeah.
struggling to fill up the form.
What happens to women? And of course, this could apply to some male prisoners as well. But as you said, more women are abandoned once they're inside jail. What happens to them? Women who can't access lawyers, who don't have families, whose families just leave them. What happens to them?
They basically just stick it out. And and the other thing that I must tell you, Barkha, that because a lot of them, Yedvada was a prison where there were almost 50% convicts. So they were under trials and they were convicts. In fact, the compound in which our Phansi Yard lay was mostly convicts. So these are all people who are long term, like there for 7 years, 10 years, and more, and so on. So after 7 years, then you get an option if you are, well behaved, if you're hardworking, if you're physically able, you get an option of working in the fields which are adjacent to the jail, and where actually the vegetables and rice, etc., which is used in the jail is all grown there. So these women actually start working there, and they get out because of the remission they get for that work. It's not by appealing to the high courts and supreme courts, to which they have no access. They don't have the kind of, technically they can file a jail appeal through the jailer and send it to the high court, the legal services authority, or the supreme court. That never works. So actually, in life, they only have work to rely on, and even in getting out of jail, the only thing they have to rely on is work. So they work, and that work gets them remission, and
What
they're
happens
sent.
to women? What happens to women who have children?
Now, women who have children can keep them till the age of 6, and after the age of 6, the children can't be kept there. So now that means that if somebody else is willing to take that child through the court, then that's fine. Otherwise, the child is sent to a sanstha, to a to a children's home. So the mother is in jail here, the child is in jail there, and here again, there's a lot of need of more communication between the two.
Yeah.
I mean, I can just imagine what must have been happening in COVID, etc.
And
So
and as someone who grew up as a single child of a single mother, I remember we spoke about this earlier. This must resonate with you in all kinds of ways to observe this and to think about what happens to this child when the child turns 7, for
exactly.
example.
Yes, no, and it's a heart-wrenching experience, to see that child being taken away, and other children are also crying, and the whole jail is crying while the child is being taken away. So I really think, there was in the CRPC there is a provision about being more liberal about regarding bail for women. Now, at one point of time, it was being interpreted to say, oh, women are too innocent and, goody goody to commit crime. But I think that's not the point. Of course, they might be committing crimes, they might commit serious crimes. I mean, that's not the point. But the point is that when you put a woman in jail, you literally put a family in jail. It's because those children, what happens to the children? And I think that is a point which must be taken into account when bail is given, unless that
Do
person is really a risk, a threat. I
to
mean,
society, and in that case to her own child, that is also
yes,
possible, right?
yes,
I want to ask you, were you able to document concrete inequities in access to legal aid between women and men?
See, actually, what I wrote is was all in Yerwada, because then when we went to Baikala, which
Yeah.
I was in Yerwada from November 2018 to February 2020. And then after that, then after that was COVID. So from February 2020 to December 2021, I was in Baikala. But I stopped writing because I was in the barrack, and then I actually became a lawyer. So I was vakil auntie. People would come with applications and all that. So then it became, as a lawyer, it's not proper to divulge the confidences of your client. Even here, I have not mentioned names, but
But you're not
I,
are you a trained lawyer?
yes, I am. Yes, very much so.
But that's not what you studied at IIT.
No, at IIT, I studied MSc Mathematics, after which I went to the trade union. And it was in the course of my trade union work that it was my trade union comrades basically who made me a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I became lawyer at the age of 40.
Yeah, I should have known that, but somehow I was thinking of you as an activist, as an IIT graduate,
No,
and
no,
I had
no.
forgotten
I'm
the.
very much a lawyer. I became a lawyer in the year 2000, and after that, I was practicing in the initially in the labor courts, and then later on in the Chhattisgarh High Court. And I had we had a slightly different kind of practice because um, since I came from a trade union background and I saw the difficulties which workers and had in accessing legal aid. So basically we used to do legal aid for all kinds of different movements. So there were communities who were facing land acquisition, or environmental degradation, or the Adivasis needing forest rights. And so those were the kind of cases our group of lawyers used to do.
Okay.
So in that sense, I was very aware of legal aid and the problems of legal aid.
Yeah.
Um,
But
yeah,
did you
sorry.
find that fewer women got lawyers compared to men? Access to that legal aid?
See, it's difficult to say. You see, one thing is that in Yerwada, of course, I really didn't have access to, it was just individual stories. In Baikala, I had more of a sense of it. But then, you see, I think the problem is that the legal aid is not of much use unless you have a family member outside. I'll be very frank. And that is where being a man and being a woman is very different. Because whatever the man might be, his wife or his mother will go to visit him in the jail, and they will try their hardest to get a lawyer for him. And if he's a breadwinner of the family, everybody is
Correct.
trying very hard to get him out. On the other hand, a woman may be completely forgotten. And particularly a woman who commits a crime like, say, killing her husband is probably going to be abandoned by both sides of the family. Nobody wants to have anything to do with her.
Right.
So there she's completely dependent on the legal aid lawyer. And now
Yeah.
this is the problem. Yeah, because
Let,
the legal aid, it's a very one-way thing. The legal aid lawyers just don't come to meet women
Yeah.
as frequently
So,
as they should.
in a way, it all traces back to the already entrenched inequities. The last question to you, Sudhaji. I know we can't ask about the case, but for you, how has life been on bail? The last time we spoke, you said you didn't even have an apartment. You were looking for one. It was tough to make ends meet. How is life today on bail?
Well, first of all, I must say that I've been very lucky that many trade unions, many lawyers here, senior lawyers, and many social activists have been very welcoming to me, very friendly. And, otherwise, so now I live in the house of a friend. Obviously, I can't afford rent, trade unions support me. I do legal cases for them. And I am also, I also sit in the chamber of a senior lawyer with whom I work. So, I'm more or less back to doing the
Back
kind
on
of,
your feet. Back on your
yes,
feet.
back on my feet. And yeah, so of course I miss Chhattisgarh a lot, but I'm back on my feet.
Well,
Yes.
glad to hear that, and look forward to maybe a sequel to this book, and also to being able to talk about your own time, your own case when you're freer legally to talk about it. I hope we're able to have that conversation very soon as well. Sudha Bharadwaj, always a pleasure. Thank you so much, and take care.
Thank you, Barkha. Thank you, Barkha.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye. Mojo's Story has always made a commitment to its viewers to go to where the story is. And as you can see here, we are at the epicenter of the Israel war on Gaza. We are right at the front line, about 1 mile from the Gaza Strip, as the Israeli military gets ready with its tanks and its gunners to begin its final frontal assault that will take troops into Gaza. As we said, we are not like other organizations. We believe in giving you all sides of the story objectively and as much as possible from the ground. And that's exactly what we're doing here, covering the biggest global story today from the epicenter of the war zone. So please, we need your support. Support us, become a Mojo member, subscribe to us, spread the word, and thank you for your support.